Hey friend, it's me Vasco with a quick announcement. We at the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast are organizing this year's Scrum Master Summit. For tickets and details on the summit, check out the URL bit.ly/SM Summit 22. All one word, SMSUMMIT 22. And now, on to the show. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Friday TGIF and Product Owner episode this week with Bevan Williams. Hi, Bevan. Welcome back.
Hi, Vasco. Thank you. Happy Friday.
Yeah, absolutely. TGIF, everybody. We talk about product owners because, of course, the product owner is the Batman to our Robin, right? Like we are the dynamic duo. We have to be working together. So let's dive into that. We'll talk about a great example in a minute. But to get us started, share with us what might have been potentially, Bevan, the worst product owner anti-pattern you've witnessed in your career.
Just the completely absent product owner. I think that's probably the one that affects the team the most. I've been fortunate, one might say, in some regards, to work with quite a few scenarios and teams that have this problem. It's especially prevalent in large organizations where, the product owner role is this someone that has authority, able to make decisions. So they tend to pick people that are really, really senior in the organization. And if this is an organization new to agile ways of working, there might be multiple levels of hierarchy between this person and the team. So they never really see themselves as part of a team. So what tends to happen is they've got a day job, and maybe 20 to 30% of their time planning is dedicated towards being a product owner. What this means is that the team themselves never gets the answers. When they come in and they are available, they just, firing off instructions because this is the limited time they have available. Their focus is generally somewhere else. The other thing is also doing the actual tactical part of the work is to start slipping away because, having the time to actually, dig into the whole backlog, make those changes, clean it up, work with the team, have conversations, add scope, remove scope. It's sometimes seen for these product owners as menial work. In fact, one product owner in the past actually said it to me, says, I don't have to do this because I delegate this in my other teams that I work with that are, traditional, more waterfall type projects. So why must I be doing this for this team? So it's probably the biggest anti-pattern is product owners that aren't dedicated to working with a team, even if it's not 100% of the time, but just, really focus on that role.
One of the things that I very often observe with this type of product owners is that they tend to downplay the importance of the product owner role. And in one way in which they do that is, they might just take a weekend and write all the requirements, come in on Monday and say, hey, everybody, here's what you need to do. Call me when it's done. And of course, invariably, they'll come in a few months later and say, why isn't it done already? Right? And the team will probably have many, many good reasons why it's not done. But the most obvious one is that we didn't really understand what you meant and you were not available to explain it to us. That kind of dynamic also from a Scrum Master perspective is also something we should fight actively, right? And it's not always possible to get those people involved directly with the team, but we need to figure out what's an acceptable level of involvement that this person is willing to give us, and then slowly move the responsibility elsewhere, like including to the team. That might be a possibility, but we have to recognize that sometimes these people are just not available and they can't really be productive product owners.
Absolutely. So, in the instances where we've done that, there isn't always the appetite to make changes to those roles. There's big complexities in these companies that have been added over years of, this is someone's job, right? There's reporting lines to consider, there's bonuses, there's all these things to consider. So exactly that, working with the team and the limited time with the product owner to understand, well, what is it that we need from this role of product owner and how can we split that? So one place where we've kind of solved it really, really well was the product owner was quite removed from the team as well, and actually was managing a few other teams as well, like really, really, really experienced person in the organization, but had the most invaluable first-hand knowledge of what the end user of this product actually needed, right? Because coming from that background himself. And then we had the same conversation, and a lot of the responsibilities actually went to, one of the more experienced analysts at the time, to the point that analyst eventually became the product owner. All right, so actually just say, well, we need to empower this person to make those decisions and involve you more as a stakeholder with your, 20 or 30% availability. And that seemed to solve that problem in most of the instances that we do, is really just empower someone with the product management, skill set, experience, passion, and get them from there.
This also highlights how important it is for us Scrum Masters to have the longer term in perspective, not just what we need to do now, but okay, so if we're going to solve this, what are the options long term, right? Like you said, maybe we can, help this analyst become a product owner over time if they just get the practice and the support, right? And that's a great way to, slowly progress towards having the team to be more independent from the product owner's absence, right? So, Bevan, that was a bad example, but of course, we want to hear of a great example, potentially the best product owner you've ever worked with. Describe them for us.
So again, very, very quick to come to mind as well. And interestingly enough, this great product owner started off in the same anti-pattern. So with regards to availability, right? So again, not necessarily due to them, but at the time this company was growing, there was one product person now spread over, 5 different teams. And the one team was in a different time zone entirely, but there was a little bit of overlap, but it was a different time zone, which meant that, if there was a question for the product owner on scope in a current sprint, you would have to wait until the next day to get an answer. And if that answer didn't clarify things and you asked another question, you might have to wait to the next day as well. And the reason this became a great product owner was just the willingness to learn and try to improve things. So being able to share that information, back to the product owner and going, well, how do we solve this together? And actually having, her sit down with the team and say, well, how do we solve this together? And at that time, I had just come back from Agile 2017 and David Marquet was one of the keynote speakers with his intent-based leadership. And we came back, we were like, we are going to try this. This sounds like it's a technique that might help. And again, this willingness to learn, this openness of the product owner, which I see as a really valuable trait in product ownership, to say, well, I want, and this was something that was always really important to her, is that I want the team to think like I do. I want them to be able to make product decisions, and I want to enable and rely on the expertise. And it's just, how do we get that done? And this intent-based leadership came back as a challenge. I read the book on the plane back from the US, and we tried it. We brought in this language saying, instead of waiting for availability from the product owner, which we can't change right now, what we do have control over is, you've got really good intuition for what this product needs to do. Make a decision and let her know why you made that decision. And at one stage we measured over a month period, she was on average getting about 100 questions over a month. And it's not exact. We didn't track for too long, but it was about 100 questions in a month that she would be getting, that she would have to respond to each one. In the following month, it went down to two questions that she actually had to respond on, to say, oh, hold on, wait a minute. There's actually other context. So you've made your decision, you've given up options, but actually the decision you make is missing some context that I can now give you. So from 100 having to be available for these questions, just on one of the teams was down to 2. So it was this openness from the product owner to just really, really learn, and that desire to say, how can we get the team to think like I do? So how do I empower them? How do I give them all the information? And that was just, the one technique that happened to help in that scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll put the link on the show notes to intent-based leadership, and of course to the episode with David Marquet that we have here on the podcast as well. Definitely great stuff, very inspiring. And I really like this story because, first of all, is what can we do right now? Like, I think that's a very powerful question for us to ask ourselves and to ask the team. We can't solve the availability right now. What else can we do right now, right? That helps us move forward. And then this idea of creating the space to have more in-depth dialogue with the PO, because the moment you have a lot of questions, there's not a lot of time for in-depth conversation. But once you allow the team to make decisions and you have the regular, let's say, whatever, weekly refinement meeting, then we can talk about the decisions we've made. And now there's thinking on both sides that has happened, and we can dive into the details and add that context, as you were saying in the story. So that's very, very important, because the fact that a PO is absent tells us that we need to make their time count even more. And it's not that, dear PO, we don't really care, you still need to answer these 100 questions a month. It's more like, how can we make the questions that come to the PO so relevant that their presence is really impactful for the team, right? So if we take the majority of the small things away by bringing the team closer to the product backlog, then we can then spend time really diving into the really tricky product questions that might come up.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm quite a big fan of one of the changes that were made recently to the Scrum Guide, where it was made explicit that there's the Scrum team, and the Scrum team themselves is self-managed, because together they should be able to decide, why are we doing what we're doing, what are we doing, and how are we going to do it. So it made it very clear that there's this difference between accountability and doing the work itself. So getting the product owner to realize that the whole team can actually work towards the same vision and direction, and it's not about I have to have all the answers as a product owner. I want you to be able to answer it the same way that I do. I'm responsible for sharing the context, from stakeholders, from customers, from users, as we're measuring data. I'm responsible for bringing in that visibility, and that means all of us can make the decisions together, which is quite powerful.
Absolutely. Great story. Thank you for sharing that, Bevan. Unfortunately, we're getting close to the end, but before we go, do share with us, where can we find out more about you and the work that you're doing?
I guess LinkedIn would be the best. So just, Bevan Williams. I sometimes post on Twitter. I'm not the most active Twitter. I like to lurk. I learn so much from Twitter. You can also find out more about us at thinkagile.co.za. That's kind of where I do all of my work at the moment. I'm also a volunteer at SAGSA, so the Scrum User Group of South Africa. I can share that link with you as well, Vasco. So we're actually hosting our regional Scrum gathering at the beginning of March as well, which we should do every year. So that's how you can find me.
Absolutely. We'll put the links on the show notes. And dear audience, please do reach out and ask Bevan for questions, or ask questions that maybe I didn't and you want to know more about, for sure. So, Bevan, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for your generosity with your time and your knowledge.
It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Hey friends, it's Vasco again, now with a bit longer announcement. I'm part of the team that is behind the Global Scrum Master Summit, the conference dedicated to the Scrum Master role. If you're a Scrum Master, the Scrum Master Summit is the place to learn, to share, and of course to meet new friends. We will have lots of live sessions where you can meet and network with other Scrum Masters from the whole globe. So make sure you check it at bit.ly/SM Summit 22. We have several amazing keynotes and 7 tracks that feature people like you and, of course, thought leaders sharing their insights, their knowledge, and helping you become an awesome Scrum Master. You can check out all of the details of the summit, including the keynotes announced, the track chairs, and much more at bit.ly/SM Summit 22. That's all one word. That's bit.ly/SM SUMMIT and the numeral 22. I'll see you on the conference floor.